Well, welcome to day 2 of the 10th Eurasian Media Forum. I hope you found yesterday's sessions informative and thought-provoking. I think the Eurasian Media Forum certainly lived up to its reputation for being an ideal ground for debate on topics that affect the East and the West, but are often missed by the global conference circuit and often the media too. And it's an event that bridges the gap between the two sides that are often divided by misconceptions. I speak at events around the world, and whenever I'm doing so in America, I remind the people there that the most dangerous word in the world is the. It's the word the, if you say it in Arabic, because in Arabic it's al. And if you put al in front of anything, suddenly it becomes dangerous, because you have Al-Qaeda, Al-Aqsa, Al Jazeera. But then I remind Americans that, well, you've got Al Gore, and you used to have Al Capone. Then I also remind them there was a time when the word al was actually a good word because it brought all these amazing things from the East, like algebra and alchemy, and would you believe alcohol? It's actually an Arab word. That usually shuts them up. Well, yesterday's forum was full of interesting debate and lively debate. We started out looking at the legitimacy of the so-called war on terror with some interesting perspectives on the issue of how radicalization and global terrorist actions could be more rationally handled. The second session yesterday moved on to the subject of the Arab Spring, and that certainly created a stir with a heated debate on the issue of whether or not it's really a change for the better in most of the affected countries. I enjoyed moderating that third session, examining Kazakhstan's anti-nuclear initiative in the light of Iran's nuclear program developments, which included the various diverse perspectives of both a high-level former American diplomat and a senior member of Iran's foreign ministry, as well as, of course, some very memorable comments from the British Member of Parliament, George Galloway. And, of course, we ended the debate of the day looking at the media's double standards, prompting some fairly harsh criticism of the mainstream global media. Well, today is certainly going to be interesting as we start off examining Europe's economic, political, social, and cultural crisis. We go on to look at perspectives on the customs union of Russia, Kazakhstan, and Belarus, which is an important topic that's certainly not being covered properly, I would think, by anyone outside this region. And we'll wrap up with an intriguing look at the WikiLeaks phenomenon, which should certainly raise some interesting points too. Now, don't forget, this conference is about your participation, so please don't hesitate to take part with your questions and comments. We have some of the world's top minds on these issues gathered here in Kazakhstan, which is giving you the opportunity to add your voice. So I'll start off with the first session of 3 sessions today, looking at economic, political, social, and cultural crisis in Europe. Is the point of no return behind us? For that, I'd like to invite forward the moderator of the session, a dear friend from my days at CNN, the network's London-based versatile star anchor, Becky Anderson. Becky.
A very good morning to everybody. It's a joy to be here in Astana. It's my first time, day 1, of course, providing, as Riz said, some pretty provocative discussions, as you would expect from this esteemed and at times controversial set of delegates here. It was a great first day, and it was a good alcohol-fueled evening. One wishes that word hadn't ever been created, as it were. But great to be here for day 2. The session will address the following questions. Economic, political, social, and cultural crises in Europe. Is the point of no return behind us? There's no doubt that Europe is faced with an enormous challenge, and its future course today is very uncertain. Will the euro survive? If it does, will its members be the same? Is Europe headed for federalism? And if it is, what does that mean? What would the consequences of a federal state be? And I don't need to remind anybody here that Greece is going through one of its worst depressions in modern history. Much the same, of course, can be said for Spain, for Portugal, and for Italy and beyond. Unemployment across the Eurozone is running as high as 25%, and for those under the age of 25, it's running as high as 1 in 2. Some 50-odd% of under 25-year-olds in Greece, and indeed in Spain, are now unemployed. In this context, the continuing inflow of immigrants has intensified nationalist and right radical tendencies, leading not just to the rise in support for right-wing parties, but to the declaration by leaders of Germany, France and Britain that multiculturalism has failed. To quote the German Chancellor Angela Merkel, it's failed and utterly failed. The British Prime Minister David Cameron agreed, saying that the doctrine of state multiculturalism had encouraged segregation. And in France, you'll remember, during the election campaign, the then French President Nicolas Sarkozy promised to cut by half the number of immigrants going into France. If this European mess is a crisis of economics and finance, it's also a crisis of culture. The programme here today promotes discussion of the following question: is this fiasco of multiculturalism in Europe the consequence of a war of civilization? Which is a very good question. Why are so many European leaders saying multiculturalism has failed? Is it short-term political gain or something deeper than that? So, all worthy of discussion today and debate by our panellists, who I will introduce now. Theo Panagoulos is the former Deputy Prime Minister of Greece, who some might say played a part in exacerbating the problem Europe now faces. He's never one to shy away from controversy and is always provocative. We thank you for being here. Christian Misch is a former member of the Swiss Parliament and as such well placed to offer us a considered view of the European meltdown, sitting as he does on the fringes of the European Union. I'm sure the Swiss are very pleased these days that they are not in the European Union. Gideon Rachman, Chief Foreign Affairs Commentator for the Financial Times, one of today's best, most insightful commentators on the economics and politics of the European crisis. Günter Knabe is a German journalist and author who has focused much of his career covering Central Asia and as such should be able to comment on the future of Europe through the prism of Eurasia. And I know that's very much the point of this conference, looking at these issues through the prism of Central Asia. Vitaly Tretyakov is General Director and Chief Editor of the Independent Publishing Group in Russia and the presenter of the prize-winning show What to Do? Philosophical Conversations. And Rustam is the editor-in-chief of Russia's first public Muslim TV channel set up to promote Islamic religious and spiritual values. So, our guests are introduced today. Let's get this discussion going. I want to start with you, Theo, and a very simple question, which is this: what or who caused the economic crisis in Europe?
Well, thank you very much. I presume I have the honor of speaking first because I am, as you said, I was 1 year ago the vice president of a government that had to face a crisis and an impossibility to raise money on the international markets. And this is not a unique situation. It happened before, but it is the first time it happens to a Eurozone country, to a country that has its currency, the common currency. This kind of currencies usually don't suffer from whatever might have been treated wrong, in a wrong way by their government or by their societies. The biggest example is the dollar. The dollars get away, the Americans get away with huge deficits for almost a century now. And we in Europe thought for a long period that our common currency was that kind of currency. Well, it is not. And I might say at the end why it's not so. And what happened in Greece is very difficult for me to resume, but I will try to resume in this number of phrases. Greeks discovered that it was possible year after year to be happier and richer than the year before. And then when they entered the euro currency, they discovered that you can do that, I mean, becoming wealthier and happier every year without actually having money. because with very small interests, the euro interests, you could address to the banks, or rather you could accept the invitations of the banks that urged you to get loans, to buy a house, to better life, to travel. Even loans for holidays were available to ordinary working people. And Greece and the Greeks got deep in debt. And specifically, the Greek state got in debt because for a number of years, our state spent more than it could raise on the fiscal market. So this is the situation. And then a moment came where a rate of deficit, of public deficit, compared with a very huge debt that has been concentrated over the years, made us unable to raise money in the market under acceptable conditions. We had to pay something like 7.5%. This is the point of no return. So this is the story of Greece, and the problem has been then what happens in such a situation. Does the country in question have to leave the euro currency? That's a problem for euro, the problem I more or less described in the beginning. Or do we have to help this country to get over, after a period of adjustments, and structural adjustments specifically, over the crisis, and then enter back the family with better behavior and promises that it will not do that again. Several schools of thought were confronted. I would say that there was a very strong influence of the, I would call that the Protestant or moralistic school of thought that said the Greeks do that not only because economic factors entered, but because they have bad character. And they have bad character because they have the wrong climate. They have so much sun, they have all those beaches, and they like so much to drink wine, and they have these beautiful women they run after, and so they spend their time in different things that are not morally accepted, and they get in debt.
Is that true?
This was very popular in Germany specifically. And Forum, for instance, Forum is a very serious newspaper. That's why I mentioned it's not Das Bild or something like that. Forum had dedicated one issue to the Greek economy. On the front page, there was the Venus of Milo, one of the most beautiful women of the world, which is in the Louvre today. That was doing a very bad thing with her finger to the rest of the Europeans. I won't show you exactly what it was. So this is the approach that says, here we have the opportunity to give a lesson. Through Greece, we give a lesson to the rest of the countries of the euro so that they behave in a well-understood Lutheran Calvinistic way, spending exactly the amounts of money that they can afford to spend, and then have savings and investment rate that is appropriate. Well, then we discovered, the people in Brussels and in the big capitals, and most of all in Bonn, because Bonn, Germany is the country that is the stronger economy in the euro, and they have also the money. They pay the biggest part of the bill. So they discovered in Bonn, I say Bonn, Berlin. In Berlin, they discovered that Greeks were not the only problem. There was a problem in Portugal, and there was a problem in Spain, and most of all, there might be a problem in Italy. Greece is a very, very small economy, 0.1 something from the European economy. This could be handled as a specific case. But what I just described cannot be handled as a specific case, and we have to see what happens. So if you want, I will try to use, I'm not a fan of PowerPoints, but there are things I cannot describe if I don't give you a picture. So I will try to put that on the, it doesn't.
Is that going up?
It is supposed to.
I'm supposed to...
show something.
I'm not sure how it works either.
It doesn't.
Well, just carry on.
Well,
there you go, there you go.
oh.
Let's zip
Well,
through it.
this is pure, this is advertisement for me, you can. Well, this is interesting. This is world GDP per capita in 1990 international dollars, which is a way to find a possibility to measure different situations over centuries, as you see, because there are 5 centuries at the bottom of the scale. And it's an IMF. I mean, it's not me who did it, it's IMF who did it. So as you see, from the 16th century to the middle of the 20th century, the world GDP per capita is below 2,000 international dollars, and is more or less steady for centuries. Between the 16th century and the beginning of the 20th century, it grows very little. Then we said this sudden change, and look what happens between the middle of the 20th century and the 21st century. That's after 1950, after the Second World War. We have a loss of control, if I may say so. There are enormous discussions we can have on the basis of this picture, whether we have to go so fast, whether we can afford to go so fast forever, whether there is a necessity of a movement to go slower, and why, for instance, one argument could be that
I'm going to get you to whip through these, Tim.
This kind of growth creates inequalities, enormous inequalities. So we see another picture, which is,